Welcome to Get Serious. So I wanted to jump back into more of the review of my notes from the 11 straight hours spent with Alex Hormozi. This was at the affiliate live event from the $100 million money model launch. A few of these podcast episodes, check over the past couple weeks if you want additional recap here. Again, never taken more notes at a live event compared to this. Again, if it's pure Hormozi, giving it to you straight for literally a full day, 24 hours. It's just pretty incredible to get that. So jumping back into this again, the format was 10 fireside chats and then an open mic for the audience afterwards. So just constant back and forth questions and Alex just giving back his thoughts and feedback on specific situations. So he's mentioned this in other areas before. I think it's something that just bears worth repeating. And so few people actually do it, where he's like, especially earlier on in your business, like just focus on one channel and one audience until you hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue. And so, a lot of us in land, this is another kind of tricky area because, especially nowadays where there's a multitude of different marketing techniques, I'd say even like 5 years ago or a little over 5 years ago, like pretty much, everybody was just doing mail. There were a handful of folks doing other strategies. Not that there are that many, like there's only so much direct marketing that efforts that you can do to reach customers. Nowadays, it's such a grab bag where, you can do the mail, you can do the cold call, you can do texting. Some folks will do PPC as well. And so folks will just bounce between each of those and never really start to reap the rewards if you really, really get good at one of those channels. Like, whenever you start something, like again, volume negates luck. You never forget like that is the golden rule here, where you just have to get reps in. Like the best people, they just constantly get reps, more reps and more reps. Like, it's another project I was working on, but like I probably reviewed roughly 2,000 land comps over the past 5 days. I've never reviewed that many comps in my life, and it was just like an extraordinary amount. To definitely burnt myself out. Like I was under the gun to get this done by a deadline for something I'll get into later. But just my understanding, which was already very high level about reviewing land properties and how to price things. Like I'm still just more reps are never going to hurt. Like I was even getting increased insights in different states around the country and characteristics that were more reliable in certain areas to bump price or decrease price in the reverse direction than like I would have done before. So thousands and thousands of these, just getting those reps in. So same thing again, if you're marketing, like, it could take you potentially tens of thousands of letters until you start figuring out what mail techniques are going to work for you, or cold calls or texting. Like, whenever you listen to the podcast and people are on, and like people with similar sized businesses or folks who have found some type of staying power, like very rarely they will have the exact same marketing method, but they found a way to make it work in one, at least one direction. And some of them, as they got bigger, then they can throw in another arm to market out further. But, that is an example where it's like, okay, get that one channel nailed, like become $1 million business first before you really try to push in other directions. And, Alex was just mentioning where, just every business is incurring debt every single day, but you have to pick carefully what debt you are incurring. Is it monetary? Like you're actually taking out, loans to finance your business? Is it on a manpower perspective? Like, are you burning out your team to get certain initiatives done that is not sustainable longer term, but it's a debt that you're willing to take on to reach certain objectives? Is it, related to like the ignorance tax? Like, are you paying a debt with just not knowing, what you're doing? You're trying something newer that is going to be riskier, and so you're incurring a debt of not focusing on items that may more sustainably and reliably bring you in revenue, but they might lead to the next breakthrough. So you have to pick one of these areas, hopefully not all at once, because Alex was like, always take out the debt in the business that you can pay back the fastest. Sometimes it is monetary, sometimes it is from a time side, or picking a new area, or burning out your team, but knowing like it'll help break you through for better operational setups in the future that can kind of prevent that. So really kind of heavy AI build out, for instance. So it's like, okay, where can you pay that debt back the fastest, knowing that you are always paying debt every single day? Something to think about strategically for businesses. And related to that strategy and what makes business so hard to teach, and again, because it's just always evolving, the infinite game. And Hormozi was just like, the only way to grow is that you eventually need to determine and experiment with counterintuitive strategies, because that is where the growth is for any business that's trying to get to the next level. You can kind of think about that, because like the actual intuitive strategies, you're almost assuredly already doing that. Again, there's no shortcuts, right? Or as soon as a shortcut is found out, it ceases to become a shortcut because everybody does it, and that becomes the new baseline. Like I would even say, Hormozi's money model, put like that, that's a shortcut for now, because it starts teaching you certain marketing strategies and tactics that can help get you to the next level. But pretty soon that is baseline operations that any entrepreneur is going to need to even, maintain a status quo. So you can kind of assume, maybe you have your bookkeeping, like QuickBooks or whatever, like, okay, anything, intuitive, you need to maintain some type of marketing and sales channels, and have some type of operations. Like what's the way that most of the businesses in your market are doing it? Okay, that's probably the intuitive pathway. It might have got you to a certain level, but in order to grow further, it's like, okay, what are those counterintuitive pathways? And like, to provide a concrete example, and one that Alex mentioned and something related to us too, is to actually take fewer customers but more profit longer term. Like say you're running a consulting business. Yeah, if you bump your prices, naturally that's going to price some people out from your services, but it can bump your lifetime value and potentially the satisfaction of your customers a lot more over the long term, as your advertising and kind of testimonials and so forth build up to where, you might take a shorter term hit as your business adjusts to fewer customers, but that longer term profit bumps up. Same with what we've been doing in our business too, is like we have been steadily raising the minimum purchase price for deals that we go after. Now we're sitting at $50K minimum purchase price. They're, even on our outbound channels, like looking for properties that people are seeking funding on, like there are so many, probably more than half of all deals that we'll see are like, in the sub 50K range. Even in like the 10, 15, 20, 25K, like we could still continue to do those, but to me, like I just value the liquidity even more to go after juicier, bigger deals where it might have back end profit that could justify like 6 or 7 of those smaller deals that may require the same amount of effort to go after. So like that, we were building up our business to focus on so much volume over time, but then I realized, as we were starting to plateau revenue wise, it's like, we need to open up our operations even more to go after bigger stuff, even if our volume decreases, because, I just know like the biggest operators in the land space, I mean, we're talking into like the hundreds of millions, like $1 billion levels, like they work on fewer projects, right? Like the check sizes get bigger inherently because there's just less, and the volume goes down because there's just less properties at that size that are going to truly pencil out. So that's like the only logical pathway to follow. But it's counterintuitive in the immediate term, because it's like, we're running our business well, like we have this solid volume coming in, it's profitable, but at some point you need to take a counterintuitive strategy to reach that next level. And another piece here too that he just mentioned, because a whole bunch of businesses were represented there, and a number of folks run coaching businesses, or like, or what could more broadly be considered, info related businesses. And there's a whole bunch of those in the land space too. Like look at how many, like the whole coaching segment has just exploded over, the past 5 years, say even over the past 3 years, especially. And, I think there's already so many solid operators out there, and some people's personalities like might click with certain, coaches better. Do I really think the content is that different? No. But yeah, at the same time, like the industry almost requires that amount of coaches because it's just inherently tough to scale. And because, usually the highest price items within coaching businesses like one-on-one help, right? Like one-to-one direct consulting work, like it's really hard to scale, right? Because you only have so many hours in the day to do that work, and you're usually the talent behind it. And then you could start doing like one-to-many or, recorded coach, sessions and so forth. And but naturally that price is going to decrease or for what people are willing to pay. And usually satisfaction is not going to be as high. Alex was bringing up this analogy, like take a glass of milk, for instance. And, if you just have like a full, normal, I don't know, a 12-ounce glass of milk, and that represents like your star talent, your coach, one-on-one consulting session, great. That's what will give people the most satisfaction. But like the only way to scale coaching businesses is like you just can't give that full glass of milk away over time. So you're either going to have to get, a team of coaches to work with you. Could still be like very qualified people. And like this was, similar to, going to this Hormozi live event here where we got for 11 straight hours just the full glass of milk, right? But that's not typical. Like, for most live events and, the acquisition headquarters, like I think they do four to five live events every single week. Like they do a ton. It brings them in a ton of business, and they do a lot of upsells there and so forth. But generally, Alex is just one session per day. So maybe he does like an hour-ish each day there compared to 11 hours. So, but, he has this kind of crack team around him that, leads to the rest of the day. But that's still a smaller amount of time with Alex himself, but you do get significant amounts of time with these other coaches. And so you get kind of a diluted full glass of milk. You get a little bit of Alex here, and this kind of leads to the other part of, with these coaching businesses, you can either get like the diluted full glass. So you have a team of other coaches working with you, and they're very solid, hopefully, but they're not like that key person who initially started the business. Or you just have to distribute your time as like the main coach for, shorter and shorter segments. So he's like, instead of a diluted full glass, you can get small shot glasses of, the undiluted milk, but, it's just much shorter time, like even 10, 15-minute type of spans here. In the case of these live events, it's like an hour of Alex's time is kind of the shot glass, right? Or like a Tony Robbins event. You might be able to get direct coaching from one of his coaching team in a much more extensive session. But, as Hormozi was mentioning, like if you probably check the NPS scores from like, folks just being attended to by Tony's coaches versus like, short segments with Tony himself, like probably people will still prefer those shorter segments with, Tony Robbins. So like that's what makes it so hard to scale these, because again, it's either much shorter segments, with the main person, the main firepower, or, diluted full sessions with the team. So there's just always a trade-off there, right? So, and that's something we see within the land space too. Why it's so hard to scale that and also run a separate, land businesses in and of themselves. So something to think about from, just in the spirit of trade-offs here. Alex was just mentioning of like everybody always just, again, they want all the benefits right away without any of the trade-offs. But again, life is just all about trade-offs. And he's like, these type of businesses, like he had a friend of his, I think it was one of the guys who was on the launch event, and it was one of the software companies. But this guy and his wife had, they lived on like roughly $70,000 income. Not like impoverished, but it's not going to allow for anything lavish really. And they lived on that for like their 20s all the way through their 30s roughly. And then they had a $250 million exit, by around that age 40 mark. because they just stayed so focused on reinvesting further into the business and building up that potential exit value to now, like, be set easily, generationally wealthy from an exit like that. Whereas another friend of his, is running just a much more profitable business, but like taking out a lot of those profits just for personal lifestyle, earlier on, just to enjoy it more. But the trade-off was that, the enterprise value of the company was just less because, there was just less being reinvested back into the business and back into the operations and growing the team and so forth. More like to just, let the founder enjoy his life more. And so like Alex was like, hey, you can kind of pick 3 out of this grouping where you can have super profitable business, grows really quickly, and has high enterprise value. Like you can pick 2. Right. So like there has to be a trade-off within that. So like when I think of land, for instance, for the most part, I think it generally falls into the super profitable business and grows quickly. Like that would be most folks. But like, I don't think many land businesses have that high of enterprise value. Just because first, so much just relies on just continuous churn of incoming leads. And you don't really have repeat customers for the most part either. Like there's not like great lifetime value. I mean, I guess there is generally on like an average sale basis, but you're just utilizing one sale pretty much primarily on the dispo to like assign lifetime value to your customer base ultimately. So it's kind of a weird setup there, but it's hard businesses to buy, right? Like you don't really hear much about exits within the land space. And a lot of, I know folks are getting bigger businesses more recently as it starts to operationalize, but like you really don't hear much like M&A type activity. But like, a lot of folks just funding it or more for lifestyle type business, like profitable and growing quickly, right? So you can just feed more into the machine. But at some point, you have, in order to build up that enterprise value, you would have to sacrifice some of the profits. Is that bringing on more A players? Is that investing further into your operations? How your leads are being handled? How your sales is being handled? Taking less out as a founder. That's what we're trying to do more as a bit. Like it's profitable. We reinvest constantly, but also with like the capital kind of determines the value here. So without belaboring those points here, because I think you can start considering those examples and other examples of different businesses. I guess some of like the Mag 7, they're probably, like NVIDIA is super profitable, grows quickly and high enterprise value. Even that, its quarterly revenue has been decreasing quite a bit. Still really good, but quite a bit even over the past year. So even that, it's probably it's not growing as quick as it had been. It probably hit all those 3, but even that, like even the best companies in the world, like the most valuable company ever, by like a long shot, will eventually descend into only 2 of those. Like it's just kind of the law of market. Things become more efficient over time, and you can't like continuously, infinitely capitalize on all 3 of those. So just something to think about for your own business. And it's not always going to be the same 2. Like you can orient towards 2 that are more primary or for whatever your goals are in your life. There's no rules. No one can force you to run your business in any certain way. Just, make sure you find a way to stay in business. So with that in mind, we'll end another one here that knocked out another fireside chat. I honestly think I might do like 10 of these, maybe a little bit more. Like this is just, even going through these notes, it's just helping open up so much more, lines of thought for my own self here, and hopefully for you too. So comment if you like this, or let me know. I'm going to continue to do it regardless, because this is super helpful to me, so I'm confident it will be to you too. SeriousLand.capital for any of your funding needs, and Land Daily Diligence Facebook group. Zero cost review your land deals. Subscribe and share, everybody. Take care now. Bye.